All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. And with the start of the 2022 NFL season right around the corner, who has what it takes to win the AFC South? And I'm going to start off with the Tennessee Titans, who have won this division for the last 2 years, but are they still the team to beat? Now, you have veteran quarterback Ryan Tannehill, who he's not going to be a guy that's going to put a team on his back. And I think we've seen that. He really relies on the ground attack for the Titans. And of course, for a lot of people, there's still the bad taste in their mouths after he threw three interceptions in Tennessee's divisional round loss last January to the eventual AFC champion Cincinnati Bengals. But I think the key for the Titans is staying, running back Derrick Henry staying healthy, as he only appeared in 8 games last year in the regular season for Tennessee. And then on top of that, he came back for the postseason, but you could see that he was lacking that burst. And for my money, I said it coming into last year, and it's something that I'm still going to lean on. Is Derrick Henry setting up for a slide? And I say that because, the first part of his career, he has really, carried the football a lot. And typically, what we've seen from guys once they get to that 2,000 yard plateau, they begin to start sliding. So like that's going to be the thing for me. Are the injuries going to really begin to catch up with Henry, or is he going to be able to stay fresh? And if he's able to stay fresh, obviously a lot of things change to this Titans offense. Now they traded wide receiver AJ Brown to the Philadelphia Eagles, and for head coach Mike Vrabel, he's hopeful that veteran wide receiver Robert Woods, as well as rookie Traylon Burks, can come in and fill that void. And that's going to be big in the passing game for the Titans. Now, offensive tackle Taylor Lewan still anchors one of the best lines in the NFL. And that's one thing that we've known about this team since Mike Vrabel became the head coach. The Titans are very tough in the trenches on both sides of the football. And speaking of that defensive front, the Titans are very physical up front in that front seven with the likes of Harold Landry and Jeffrey Simmons, and they are going to make life tough for opposing quarterbacks in the AFC this coming season. You look at free safety Kevin Byard, and this guy knows how to bring it both as far as covering space, and he's also a hitter. He's also an enforcer back there in that secondary for the Titans. And you think about Mike Vrabel going back to his time first as a football player at Ohio State, then with the Pittsburgh Steelers, and of course with the New England Patriots, where the bulk of his career was played. And it was all about physicality. And this is what this Titans team brings. They are a physical team. They get off of the bus at the stadium and they try to punk teams. So it's like I think that mindset is definitely going to keep Tennessee in the mix to potentially win the AFC South for the third consecutive year. A lot of interesting games on the schedule for the Titans this year. It includes a week 2 visit to the Buffalo Bills. The Titans will host the Raiders in week 3. Week 4, the Titans are at Indy. Week 7, the Titans will be home for Indy. Week number 9, Tennessee's at Kansas City. Week 10, they're home for Denver. Week 11 at Green Bay. And then week 12, it's one of those where I just see this Titans team, you know what? They're just very tough mentally and physically. And it's one of those where that is what keeps them, in the mix to win this division. Now, the Indianapolis Colts, and to me, the Colts were the ultimate enigma for the 2021 season. They began the year with a record of 1-4, only to become the hottest team in the league by reeling off 8 wins in a row, eight out of the next 10, excuse me. And then they only needed to win one of their last 2 games in order to reach the postseason, and they lost both of those contests. And subsequently, they were watching the playoffs from home. Now, things have changed this year for Indianapolis. The Colts traded starting quarterback Carson Wentz to the Washington Commanders, while they also acquired veteran starting quarterback Matt Ryan from the Atlanta Falcons. Now, Ryan is a 14-year NFL veteran who has a solid resume which includes being a former NFL MVP as well as helping the Falcons make the Super Bowl during the 2016 season. But at the age of 37, can Matty Ice still get it done at a quality level? Now, first and foremost, Colts head coach Frank Reich tends to have offensive systems that are very friendly to quarterbacks. And one thing that the Colts can do under Reich, just like it is with Vrabel with the Titans, Indianapolis can run the ball, and they also have one of the better offensive lines in football. Two things that make a quarterback's life a lot easier. Last year, the Colts were second in the NFL in rushing, and I expect them to be one of the top teams on the ground once again this year. Last year, we saw running back Jonathan Taylor set a single season franchise record for rushing with 1,811 yards. He already has 564 carries in his first two seasons in the league. So that's definitely something to keep an eye on. You have one of the better offensive lines in the league, led by center Ryan Kelly and guard Quentin Nelson. So right there, the bread and butter for this team continues to be their ground attack. And speaking of that ground attack, in the 9 games that Indianapolis won last year, Jonathan Taylor ran for more than 100 yards. In the 8 games that they lost, he was held under 100 yards. So that's something definitely, once again, to keep an eye on. You have wide receiver Michael Pittman Jr., who is beginning to come into his own, and that's going to be important. And I think he can have a big time impact on this offense this year. Number one, playing off of this Colts running game, and secondly, benefiting from playing with a veteran quarterback such as Matt Ryan. I look at this defense. You have DeForest Buckner up front on that D line, and then you pick up the veteran for the secondary and Stephon Gilmore. That's going to be important for this Titans team as they look to get to the Colts team rather, as they look to get to the postseason this year. And speaking of the Titans, do the Colts have enough to overtake Tennessee in the AFC South this year? That's going to be the big thing. I think first and foremost, it's going to be important for Indy to get off to a faster start. Week number one, they're on the road against the Houston Texans. They need to take care of their business in that game. They're then on the road for Jacksonville in week number two. If you're Indy, you want to come out of this 2-0, especially after the way that your season ended last year in Jacksonville versus those same Jaguars. The Colts will host Kansas City in week three. They'll host the Titans in week four. They're at Denver in week five. Week six, they're home for Jacksonville. And then week seven, they're at Tennessee. These are just some of the early key games on the schedule that I want to highlight. But I really want to focus on week number 4 and week number 7, those 2 meetings with the Titans. Because if you go back to last season, uh, both games between the Colts and the Titans went in favor of Tennessee. And both of those games were earlier in the season. So after that, the Colts were really fighting an uphill battle all season long. And you really want to go out there and take care of business in those divisional games. And right now, last year the Colts were close with the Titans, but they just can't get over the hump. So let's see how those 2 contests fare this season in favor of both of these clubs. And I think both of those meetings are going to go a very long way in determining who will win the AFC South this year. Now, the Houston Texans, they find themselves in the middle of a rebuild, and they're hopeful to get ahead of this thing. Last year was a very tough year for the Houston Texans for a variety of reasons. Nobody expected them to fire David Culley after 1 year, but they did. They promoted Lovie Smith as their head coach. Of course, Lovie did have some success with the Chicago Bears once upon a time as a head coach. And again, with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, he was turning things around before he was subsequently let go. So let's see what Lovie's going to do. But one thing that you know about a Lovie Smith team, they're going to bring it defensively. So that's going to be interesting to see how the Texans play. And Davis Mills, we trust at quarterback. He had 16 touchdowns and 10 picks last year as a rookie. Let's see if he can build off of that. It's going to be tough because the Texans had one of the worst offenses in the NFL a season ago. So let's see how they improve. But it's going to be important for the Texans to get some confidence early. And if not, they're going to be fighting an uphill battle all season long. Now, the Jacksonville Jaguars, they've only managed to win 10 games over the last 3 years, and they've also had 3 different head coaches during that time as well. So now enter Doug Peterson, the former Philadelphia Eagles head coach, who helped the Eagles win their only Super Bowl championship several years ago. And just like Peterson was once upon a time entrusted to get the most out of a young quarterback in Philly and Carson Wentz, he's now expected to do the same for the Jags with Trevor Lawrence. And Trevor Lawrence had a very rough go at it last year. It was a season to forget. You know, your head coach was let go before the season was gone, and Urban Meyer should have never been hired in the first place. Aside from you, the Jaguars' other early pick in last year's draft, Travis Etienne at running back, was lost early in the season with a foot injury. So now you're hopeful to get him back and see what he can do with this at this level. Now, receiving wise, we see the Jaguars with a whole bunch of twos and threes that are expected to step up. You know, they gave Christian Kirk a ton of money to come over from the Arizona Cardinals. Why, I don't know. You have the former Raider in Zay Jones and the former Lion in Marvin Jones. So let's see what Trevor Lawrence can do with these three. Rookie middle linebacker Devin Lloyd. This guy, you know, he was all over the place collegiately at Utah. So let's see how that's going to transfer over to the NFL. But for the Jags, it's all about putting a team around Trevor Lawrence. And I mean, for Jacksonville, they're not even close to being a contender. I think they'll win more games than they did last year, but I still don't think that they are that much closer to being a playoff team. I think at the end of the day, this is a two-team race between the Tennessee Titans and the Indianapolis Colts. And I think both of those games between those two teams are going to be very exciting. They are going to be very intense. And I'm going to give the Titans the slightest of slight edges to beat out the Colts to win this division. I still think that the Colts will definitely be in the mix for a postseason berth due to the fact that they run the football very well. And then on top of that, Matt Ryan is definitely an upgrade at the quarterback position over Carson Wentz. But I just look at the Titans' defense and I look at their ability to run the football as well. And I think I'm just going to give them the slightest of slight edges to win this division. Wouldn't be surprised to see the Colts and Titans meet in the postseason for a third time. But nonetheless, I'm going to go with the Tennessee Titans to win the AFC South here in 2022. So, folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. I want to take the time out to thank all of you fine folks out there for tuning in. And if you have not already, please feel free to subscribe to this channel. Now, if you're on Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it will be my pleasure to follow you right back. There's also the sports discussion group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365. You can check it out, drop a line, and be a part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. So once again, fine folks, my name is William Martin. I am signing off, saying take care and have yourselves a wonderful day.